Beyond the fences, Grant saw dense clusters of large ferns 5 feet high. He heard a snorting sound, a kind of snuffling. Then the sound of crunching footsteps, coming closer. Then, a long silence. "I don't see anything," Tim whispered finally. "Shh." Grant waited. Several seconds passed. Flies buzzed in the air. He still saw nothing. Ellie tapped him on the shoulder and pointed. Amid the ferns, Grant saw the head of an animal. It was motionless, partially hidden in the fronds, the 2 large dark eyes watching them coldly. The head was 2 feet long. From a pointed snout, a long row of teeth ran back to the whole of the auditory meatus, which served as an ear. The head reminded him of a large lizard, or perhaps a crocodile. The eyes did not blink, and the animal did not move. Its skin was leathery, with a pebbled texture, and basically the same coloration as the infant's, yellow-brown with darker reddish markings, like the stripes of a tiger. As Grant watched, a single forelimb reached up very slowly to part the ferns beside the animal's face. The limb, Grant saw, was strongly muscled. The hand had 3 grasping fingers, each ending in curved claws. The hand gently, slowly, pushed aside the ferns. Grant felt a chill and thought, "He's hunting us." For a mammal like man, there was something indescribably alien about the way reptiles hunted their prey. No wonder men hated reptiles. The stillness, the coldness, the pace was all wrong. To be among alligators or other large reptiles was to be reminded of a different kind of life, a different kind of world, now vanished from the earth. Of course, this animal didn't realize that he had been spotted, The attack came suddenly, from the left and right. Charging raptors covered the 10 yards to the fence with shocking speed. Grant had a blurred impression of powerful, 6-foot-tall bodies, stiff balancing tails, limbs with curving claws, open jaws with rows of jagged teeth. The animals snarled as they came forward, and then leapt bodily into the air, raising their hind legs with their big dagger claws. Then they struck the fence in front of them, throwing off twin bursts of hot sparks. The velociraptors fell backward to the ground, hissing. The visitors all moved forward, fascinated. Only then did the 3rd animal attack, leaping up to strike the fence at chest level. Tim screamed in fright as the sparks exploded all around him. The creatures snarled, a low reptilian hissing sound, and leapt back among the ferns. Then they were gone, leaving behind a faint odor of decay and hanging acrid smoke. "Holy shit," Tim said. "It was so fast," Ellie said. "Pack hunters," Grant said, shaking his head. "Pack hunters for whom ambush is an instinct. Fascinating." "I wouldn't call them tremendously intelligent," Malcolm said. On the other side of the fence, they heard snorting in the palm trees. Several heads poked slowly out of the foliage. Grant counted 3, 4, 5. The animals watched them, staring coldly. A black man in coveralls came running up to them. "Are you all right?" "We're okay," Grant said. "The alarms were set off." The man looked at the fence, dented and charred. "They attacked you?" "3 of them did, yes." The black man nodded. "They do that all the time. Hit the fence, take a shock. They never seem to mind." "Not too smart, are they?" Malcolm said. The black man paused. He squinted at Malcolm in the afternoon light. "Be glad for that fence, senor," he said, and turned away. From beginning to end, the entire attack could not have taken more than 6 seconds. Grant was still trying to organize his impressions. The speed was astonishing. The animals were so fast, he had hardly seen them move. Walking back, Malcolm said, "They are remarkably fast." "Yes," Grant said, "much faster than any living reptile. A bull alligator can move quickly, but only over a short distance, 5 or 6 feet. Big lizards like the 5-foot Komodo dragons of Indonesia have been clocked at 30 miles an hour, fast enough to run down a man. And they kill men all the time. But I'd guess the animal behind the fence was more than twice that fast." "Cheetah speed," Malcolm said. 60, 70 miles an hour. "Exactly." "But they seemed to dart forward," Malcolm said, "rather like birds." "Yes. In the contemporary world, only very small mammals, like the cobra-fighting mongoose, had such quick responses. Small mammals, and of course, birds. The snake-hunting secretary bird of Africa, or the cassowary. In fact, the velociraptor conveyed precisely the same impression of deadly, swift menace Grant had seen in the cassowary, the clawed ostrich-like bird of New Guinea. So these velociraptors look like reptiles, with the skin and general appearance of reptiles, but they move like birds, with the speed and predatory intelligence of birds. "Is that about it?" Malcolm said. "Yes," Grant said. "I'd say they display a mixture of traits." "Does that surprise you?" "Not really," Grant said. "It's actually rather close to what paleontologists believed a long time ago. When the first giant bones were found in the 1820s and 1830s, scientists felt obliged to explain the bones as belonging to some oversized variant of a modern species. This was because it was believed that no species could ever become extinct, since God would not allow one of his creations to die. Eventually it became clear that this conception of God was mistaken, and the bones belonged to extinct animals. But what kind of animals? In 1842, Richard Owen, the leading British anatomist of the day, called them Dinosauria, meaning terrible lizards. Owen recognized that dinosaurs seemed to combine traits of lizards, crocodiles, and birds. In particular, dinosaur hips were bird-like, not lizard-like, and unlike lizards, many dinosaurs seemed to stand upright. Owen imagined dinosaurs to be quick-moving, active creatures, and his view was accepted for the next 40 years. But when truly gigantic finds were unearthed, animals that had weighed 100 tons in life, scientists began to envision the dinosaurs as stupid, slow-moving giants destined for extinction. The image of the sluggish reptile gradually predominated over the image of the quick-moving bird. In recent years, scientists like Grant had begun to swing back toward the idea of more active dinosaurs. Grant's colleagues saw him as radical in his conception of dinosaur behavior, but now he had to admit his own conception had fallen far short of the reality of these large, incredibly swift hunters. "Actually, what I was driving at," Malcolm said, "was this. Is it a persuasive animal to you? Is it, in fact, a dinosaur?" "I'd say so, yes." "And the coordinated attack behavior?" "To be expected," Grant said. According to the fossil record, packs of velociraptors were capable of bringing down animals that weighed 1,000 pounds, like Tenontosaurus, which could run as fast as a horse. Coordination would be required. "How do they do that without language?" "Oh, language isn't necessary for coordinated hunting," Ellie said. "Chimpanzees do it all the time. A group of chimps will stalk a monkey and kill it. All communication is by eyes." "And were the dinosaurs in fact attacking us?" "Yes." "They would kill us and eat us if they could," Malcolm said. "I think so." "The reason I ask," Malcolm said, "is that I'm told large predators, such as lions and tigers, are not born man-eaters. Isn't that true? These animals must learn somewhere along the way that human beings are easy to kill. Only afterward do they become man-killers." Yes, I believe that's true, Grant said. Well, these dinosaurs must be even more reluctant than lions and tigers. After all, they come from a time before human beings, or even large mammals, existed at all. God knows what they think when they see us. So I wonder, have they learned, somewhere along the line, that humans are easy to kill? The group fell silent as they walked. In any case, Malcolm said, I shall be extremely interested to see the control room now. Version 4.4. Was there any problem with the group? Hammond asked. No, Henry Wu said. There was no problem at all. They accepted your explanation. Why shouldn't they? Wu said. It's all quite straightforward in the broad strokes. It's only the details that get sticky. And I wanted to talk about the details with you today. You can think of it as a matter of aesthetics. John Hammond wrinkled his nose as if he smelled something disagreeable. Aesthetics, he repeated. They were standing in the living room of Hammond's elegant bungalow, set back among palm trees in the northern sector of the park. The living room was airy and comfortable, fitted with a half-dozen video monitors showing the animals in the park. The file Wu had brought, stamped Animal Development version 4.4, lay on the coffee table. Hammond was looking at him in that patient, paternal way. Wu, 33 years old, was acutely aware that he had worked for Hammond all his professional life. Hammond had hired him right out of graduate school. Of course, there are practical consequences as well, Wu said. I really think you should consider my recommendations for Phase 2. We should go to version 4.4. You want to replace all the current stock of animals, Hammond said. Yes, I do. Why? What's wrong with them? Nothing, Wu said. Except that they're real dinosaurs. That's what I asked for, Henry, Hammond said, smiling. And that's what you gave me. I know, Wu said. But you see, he paused. How could he explain this to Hammond? Hammond hardly ever visited the island, and it was a peculiar situation that Wu was trying to convey. Right now, as we stand here, almost no one in the world has ever seen an actual dinosaur. Nobody knows what they're really like. Yes? The dinosaurs we have now are real, Wu said, pointing to the screens around the room. But in certain ways, they are unsatisfactory, unconvincing. I could make them better. Better in what way? For one thing, they move too fast, Henry Wu said. People aren't accustomed to seeing large animals that are so quick. I'm afraid visitors will think the dinosaurs look speeded up, like film running too fast. But Henry, these are real dinosaurs. You said so yourself. I know, Wu said, but we could easily breed slower, more domesticated dinosaurs. Domesticated dinosaurs? Hammond snorted. Nobody wants domesticated dinosaurs, Henry. They want the real thing. But that's my point, Wu said. I don't think they do. They want to see their expectation, which is quite different. Hammond was frowning. You said yourself, John, this park is entertainment, Wu said. And entertainment has nothing to do with reality. Entertainment is antithetical to reality. Hammond sighed. Now, Henry, are we going to have another one of those abstract discussions? You know I like to keep it simple. The dinosaurs we have now are real and... Well, not exactly, Wu said. He paced the living room, pointed to the monitors. I don't think we should kid ourselves. We haven't recreated the past here. The past is gone. It can never be recreated. What we've done is reconstruct the past, or at least a version of the past, and I'm saying we can make a better version. Better than real? Why not? Wu said. "After all, these animals are already modified. We've inserted genes to make them patentable and to make them lysine-dependent. And we've done everything we can to promote growth and accelerate development into adulthood." Hammond shrugged. "That was inevitable. We didn't want to wait. We have investors to consider." "Of course. But I'm just saying, why stop there? Why not push ahead to make exactly the kind of dinosaur that we'd like to see? One that is more acceptable to visitors, and one that is easier for us to handle. A slower, more docile version for our park." Hammond frowned. "But then the dinosaurs wouldn't be real." "But they're not real now," Wu said. "That's what I'm trying to tell you. There isn't any reality here." He shrugged helplessly. He could see he wasn't getting through. Hammond had never been interested in technical details, and the essence of the argument was technical. How could he explain to Hammond about the reality of DNA dropouts, the patches, the gaps in the sequence that Wu had been obliged to fill in, making the best guesses he could, but still making guesses? The DNA of the dinosaurs was like old photographs that had been retouched, basically the same as the original, but in some places repaired and clarified. And as a result... "Now, Henry," Hammond said, putting his arm around Wu's shoulder, "if you don't mind my saying so, I think you're getting cold feet. You've been working very hard for a long time, and you've done a hell of a job. And it's finally time to reveal to some people what you've done. It's natural to be a little nervous, to have some doubts. But I am convinced, Henry, that the world will be entirely satisfied. Entirely satisfied." As he spoke, Hammond steered him toward the door. "But John," Wu said, "remember back in '87 when we started to build the containment devices? We didn't have any full-grown adults yet, so we had to predict what we'd need. We ordered big taser shockers, cars with cattle prods mounted on them, guns that blow out electric nets. All built specially to our specifications. We've got a whole array of devices now, and they're all too slow. We've got to make some adjustments. You know that Muldoon wants military equipment, law missiles, and laser-guided devices." "Let's leave Muldoon out of this," Hammond said. "I'm not worried. It's just a zoo, Henry." The phone rang, and Hammond went to answer it. Wu tried to think of another way to press his case. But the fact was that, after 5 long years, Jurassic Park was nearing completion, and John Hammond just wasn't listening to him anymore. There had been a time when Hammond listened to Wu very attentively, especially when he had first recruited him, back in the days when Henry Wu was a 28-year-old graduate student getting his doctorate at Stanford in Norman Atherton's lab. Atherton's death had thrown the lab into confusion as well as mourning. No one knew what would happen to the funding or the doctoral programs. There was a lot of uncertainty. People worried about their careers. 2 weeks after the funeral, John Hammond came to see Wu. Everyone in the lab knew that Atherton had had some association with Hammond, although the details were never clear. But Hammond had approached Wu with a directness Wu never forgot. "Norman always said you're the best geneticist in his lab," he said. "What are your plans now?" "I don't know. Research." "You want a university appointment?" "Yes." "That's a mistake," Hammond said briskly. "At least, if you respect your talent." Wu had blinked. "Why?" "Because let's face facts," Hammond said. "Universities are no longer the intellectual centers of the country. The very idea is preposterous. Universities are the backwater. Don't look so surprised. I'm not saying anything you don't know. Since World War II, All the really important discoveries have come out of private laboratories. The laser, the transistor, the polio vaccine, the microchip, the hologram, the personal computer, magnetic resonance imaging, CAT scans. The list goes on and on. Universities simply aren't where it's happening anymore, and they haven't been for 40 years. If you want to do something important in computers or genetics, you don't go to a university. Dear me, no. Wu found he was speechless. Good heavens, Hammond said. What must you go through to start a new project? How many grant applications? How many forms? How many approvals? The steering committee? The department chairman? The university resources committee? How do you get more workspace if you need it? More assistants if you need them? How long does all that take? A brilliant man can't squander precious time with forms and committees. Life is too short, and DNA too long. You want to make your mark. If you want to get something done, stay out of universities. In those days, Wu desperately wanted to make his mark. John Hammond had his full attention. I'm talking about work, Hammond continued. Real accomplishment. What does a scientist need to work? He needs time, and he needs money. I'm talking about giving you a 5-year commitment and $10 million a year in funding. $50 million, and no one tells you how to spend it. You decide. Everyone else just gets out of your way. It sounded too good to be true. Wu was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "In return for what?" "For taking a crack at the impossible," Hammond said. "For trying something that probably can't be done." "What does it involve?" "I can't give you details, but the general area involves cloning reptiles." "I don't think that's impossible," Wu said. "Reptiles are easier than mammals. Cloning's probably only 10, 15 years off, assuming some fundamental advances." "I've got 5 years," Hammond said, "and a lot of money for somebody who wants to take a crack at it now." "Is my work publishable?" "Eventually. Not immediately. No." "But eventually publishable?" Wu asked, sticking on this point. Hammond had laughed. "Don't worry. If you succeed, the whole world will know about what you've done. I promise you." And now it seemed the whole world would indeed know, Wu thought. After 5 years of extraordinary effort, they were just a year away from opening the park to the public. Of course, those years hadn't gone exactly as Hammond had promised. Wu had had some people telling him what to do, and many times fearsome pressures were placed on him. And the work itself had shifted. It wasn't even reptilian cloning, once they began to understand that dinosaurs were so similar to birds. It was avian cloning, a very different proposition, much more difficult. And for the last 2 years, Wu had been primarily an administrator, supervising teams of researchers and banks of computer-operated gene sequencers. Administration wasn't the kind of work he relished. It wasn't what he had bargained for. Still, he had succeeded. He had done what nobody really believed could be done, at least in so short a time. And Henry Wu thought that he should have some rights, some say in what happened, by virtue of his expertise and his efforts. Instead, he found his influence waning with each passing day. The dinosaurs existed. The procedures for obtaining them were worked out to the point of being routine. The technologies were mature. And John Hammond didn't need Henry Wu anymore. "That should be fine," Hammond said, speaking into the phone. He listened for a while and smiled at Wu. "Fine. Yes, fine." He hung up. "Where were we, Henry?" "We were talking about Phase 2, Wu said. "Oh, yes. We've gone over some of this before, Henry." "I know, but you don't realize—" "Excuse me, Henry," Hammond said with an edge of impatience in his voice. "I do realize. And I must tell you frankly, Henry, I see no reason to improve upon reality. Every change we've made in the genome has been forced on us by law or necessity. We may make other changes in the future to resist disease or for other reasons. But I don't think we should improve upon reality just because we think it's better that way. We have real dinosaurs out there now. That's what people want to see. And that's what they should see. That's our obligation, Henry. That's honest, Henry." And smiling, Hammond opened the door for him to leave. Control. Grant looked at all the computer monitors in the darkened control room, feeling irritable. Grant didn't like computers. He knew that this made him old-fashioned, dated as a researcher, but he didn't care. Some of the kids who worked for him had a real feeling for computers, an intuition. Grant never felt that. He found computers to be alien, mystifying machines. Even the fundamental distinction between an operating system and an application left him confused and disheartened, literally lost in a foreign geography he didn't begin to comprehend. But he noticed that Gennaro was perfectly comfortable, and Malcolm seemed to be in his element, making little sniffing sounds, like a bloodhound on a trail. "You want to know about control mechanisms," John Arnold said, turning in his chair in the control room. The head engineer was a thin, tense, chain-smoking man of 45. He squinted at the others in the room. "We have unbelievable control mechanisms," Arnold said, and lit another cigarette. "For example," Gennaro said. "For example, animal tracking." Arnold pressed a button on his console, and the vertical glass map lit up with a pattern of jagged blue lines. "That's our juvenile T-Rex, the Little Rex. All his movements within the park over the last 24 hours. Arnold pressed the button again. "Previous 24. And again. "Previous 24. The lines on the map became densely overlaid, a child's scribble, but the scribble was localized in a single area near the southeast side of the lagoon. "You get a sense of his home range over time," Arnold said. "He's young, so he stays close to the water, and he stays away from the big adult Rex. You put up the big Rex and the little Rex, and you'll see their paths never cross." "Where is the big Rex right now?" Gennaro asked. Arnold pushed another button. The map cleared, and a single glowing spot with a code number appeared in the fields northwest of the lagoon. "He's right there." "And the little Rex?" "Hell, I'll show you every animal in the park," Arnold said. The map began to light up like a Christmas tree, dozens of spots of light, each tagged with a code number. "That's 238 animals as of this minute." "How accurate?" "Within 5 feet." Arnold puffed on the cigarette. "Let's put it this way. You drive out in a vehicle and you will find the animals right there, exactly as they're shown on the map." "How often is this updated?" "Every 30 seconds. "Pretty impressive," Gennaro said. "How's it done?" "We have motion sensors all around the park," Arnold said. "Most of them hardwired, some radio telemetered. Of course, motion sensors won't usually tell you the species, but we get image recognition direct off the video. Even when we're not watching the video monitors, the computer is, and checking where everybody is." "Does the computer ever make a mistake?" "Only with the babies. It mixes those up sometimes because there's such small images. But we don't sweat that. The babies almost always stay close to herds of adults. Also, you have the category tally. What's that? Once every 15 minutes, the computer tallies the animals in all categories, Arnold said. Like this. What you see here, Arnold said, is an entirely separate counting procedure. It isn't based on the tracking data. It's a fresh look. The whole idea is that the computer can't make a mistake, because it compares two different ways of gathering the data. If an animal were missing, we'd know it within 5 minutes. I see, Malcolm said. And has that ever actually been tested? Well, in a way, Arnold said. We've had a few animals die. An Othnielian got caught in the branches of a tree and strangled. One of the stegos died of that intestinal illness that keeps bothering them. One of the hypsilophodonts fell and broke his neck. And in each case, once the animal stopped moving, the numbers stopped tallying and the computer signaled an alert. Within 5 minutes. Yes. Grant said, what is the right-hand column? Release version of the animals. The most recent are version 4.1 or 4.3. We're considering going to version 4.4. Version numbers? You mean like software? New releases? Well, yes, Arnold said. It is like software in a way. As we discover the glitches in the DNA, Dr. Wu's labs have to make a new version. The idea of living creatures being numbered like software, being subject to updates and revisions, troubled Grant. He could not exactly say why. It was too new a thought, but he was instinctively uneasy about it.